Another problem that seems to exacerbate this tendency to derail on these funny coupling mechanisms is the more coaches they have behind them. So, for example, the coach that kept derailing was number 3 in a rake of 8. If, on the other hand, I put those coaches towards the back of a train where there's less drag on them because there's fewer coaches behind them, they tend to be less prone to derailing for whatever reason. So, for example, on my inner line, I've got Suncastle pulling a rake of 7 coaches. The first 3 are Hornby Railroad range Mark 1s, and the last 4 are the Super Detail Gresleys. I've done something similar now on the outer line. I've got 3 Railroad Mark 1s. I've now got a Bachmann buffet car, the Bachmann Mark 1 all third, and then a Gresley and a Bachmann at the end. Now the Bachmann have exactly the same mechanism as the Hornby one, and they are just as problematic. I've found a couple of them that were actually really catching. When you try to wriggle the bogey one way than the other, it would catch every time, and you thought, well, it could turn one way and it would always derail on the S-bend. And so I've tended to restrict those coaches towards the end of a train where they're under less tension, because that does seem to help. And in fact, in general, I've only got Bachmann coaches where the Hornby equivalent wasn't available. So the brake composite, Hornby, I don't think, make a version of that. The buffet car, Hornby only just started making a version of that. So really, I actually prefer the Hornby Railroad coaches to the Bachmann Mark 1s. The Bachmann Mark 1s are more detailed. If you look, for example, at the roof of the buffet car, you've got a lot of separate wire fittings. You've also got more writing on the more writing on the underframe. I don't know if you can even see that. You can barely see that, in fact, but it's there if that's the sort of thing you feel you need. But I think the Hornby Railroad Mark 1s are the best value coaches on the market. I mean, they're not toys, they are very accurate scale models. They just haven't got lots of complicated extra features that we don't need. Another example of things we really don't need. Here's my Gresley coach. Sprung buffers. Some people will say, oh great, sprung buffers. Who needs sprung buffers? These buffers never get pressed in, because every time they couple with another locomotive or another piece of rolling stock, it's the couplings that touch each other. It's not these buffers. The fact that the buffers are sprung is totally irrelevant, and I think it's the biggest waste of money ever on model railways. Sprung buffers. Look, oh yeah, it's got sprung buffers. When do those buffers ever get pushed back? Sprung buffers. Well, yeah, I'm going to say that's got sprung buffers, but they've jammed. So, you know, what a waste of money that was. Well, I say waste of money. It only cost me about £40, that model. But in contrast, here's my Railroad Cock of the North. No sprung buffers. I think it cost me £70. Considering it cost me £70, it's the biggest locomotive, brand new that was. Yeah, it's a lot of locomotive for £70. No fancy frills there, no fancy coupling mechanisms, nothing like that. Just a really, really good model. Robust, not too many separately fitted parts. It's, yeah, it's a good model, to be honest. And I'd say exactly the same for the Railroad Mark 1 coaches. Well, let's have a look at one of those in a bit. So here's a Hornby Railroad Mark 1. This happens to be Western Region. It's in chocolate and cream. I bought 9 of these off eBay for £96. So about, well, between £10 and £11 per coach. £10 and £11. They were mint. They were unboxed, but mint. I don't care about boxes. They're unboxed. Now, what's a limitation of them? Well, They don't have much of the writing on them, so they've just got guard, number, and on the brake coach they've got something about the load they can carry. They don't have any lettering on the end, they don't have any lettering on the underframe, they don't have any separately fitted handrails or anything like that. To be honest, on coaches you don't need them, they're just something to fall off, in my opinion. They don't have sprung buffers, the buffers are just a plastic moulded part. One thing they do have that I've removed from this coach is a Buckeye uncoupler. So you probably can't see them very clearly, but these are the Buckeye couplers. They're just cosmetic and they slot in just above the uncoupling hook, and you can see, maybe you can see on this one, just beneath the corridor connector there is a cosmetic Buckeye coupler. In fact, these would probably work if your coaches were just running in an absolute straight line, but who's got a model railway where there's just an absolute straight line? So the only reason I've removed those is what tends to happen is if your coach is on like a very slight bend and it's trying to couple up to the next coach, then the hook of the next coach, when it raises up, can actually get stuck on this cosmetic coupler, and you don't want that, because if it gets stuck it prevents the two coaches from coupling together. So I've removed those. They're not glued, they're just a tight fit in place, and you can pull them out with a pair of pliers or tweezers, just work them out, jiggle them around a bit. Apart from that, the railroad coaches are perfect as they are. What I've done with a few of mine, because I don't model the Western region, so I bought 9 of them, and they were all Western region, chocolate and cream. So what I did was I painted up some of them in a crimson and cream livery. Let's see if I can find one now. Well, there's one just there. And that one was actually just hand painted using Humbrol, the Humbrol Railway Colours acrylic crimson. You can't see there. If I just move the train along a bit, you might be able to see in a second that I have actually put some extra lettering on it. So you might be able to see at the end of the coach end, it says, say C1 or CL, I don't know what that stands for actually. Just bring the train around a bit further. Perhaps someone can tell me whether it's C1 or CL. And on the underframe, just above, let's get these ones out of the way, just above the battery box, it says something like emergency lighting point, and there's a little white star next to the vacuum pump for the, I suppose that's for the brakes. Don't really know much about coaches, to be honest. So you can buy the transfers from the Historical Model Railway Society. One sheet, I think one sheet costs about £10, and it's got enough transfers for about, I don't know, 20 or 30 coaches. So, and it's also got transfers for you know, locomotives, the British Rail emblem and things like that. To be honest, I've used them an awful lot, and they are good little ways of getting transfers on, and yeah, on numbering up, getting different coach numbers as well. You don't have to change the whole number of the coach, you can just change one number if you want. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit now, but coaches, yeah, the railroad versions of the Mark 1s have got to be the best bargain Hornby have produced in recent years, as far as I'm concerned. They just are fantastic. And, you know, even at recommended retail price of about £21, £22, something like that, they're good value. They don't have metal wheels. Some people get very hot under the collar about, oh, metal wheels, got to have metal wheels. To be honest, the wheels run very, very well. They are very smooth running coaches, and they don't derail. I've not had a single derailment when I've just run the railway coaches together. I've only ever had derailments from the Hornby Gresleys and from the Bachmann Mark 1s with their stupid arrangement of coupling. Okay, so there's just a few thoughts about coaches. You know, don't spend a fortune, buy second hand, because usually there's not a lot to go wrong if you're buying something like the Railroad range or the basic Mark 1 coaches. If you're buying something like Bachmann or the Hornby Gresleys, you've got to know about the other problems that you might encounter. One solution to those problems, by the way, is to remove the funny old mechanism of couplings completely, and just attach your own couplings to the bogies. That can be done. I've done that on one of my Gresley coaches, and I have to say it doesn't derail at all anymore. So, you know, that sort of thing is a simple solution to the problem. I might be able to show you that on one of these coaches here. Can't remember which one it is now. It's one of these. No. It's this one here. Hang on a second. Yeah, not a perfect solution. I bought one coach second-hand where one of the couplings was broken. So someone else had already somehow super glued a coupling to the bogie at one end, and I, with a bit of plastic card and a little screw, screwed a coupling on at the other end. And this coach doesn't derail. Funny that, isn't it? If only Hornby could have come up with a system where they had a coupling attached to the bogie. Wouldn't that be a novel idea? Okay, hope you found this useful. Oh, one other thing that just occurred to me. Problem I found with my Pullmans and with my Bachmann and Hornby Mark 1s with the fancy arrangement of coupling is they never come out at quite the same height. If you have a long piece of plastic with an NEM coupling hole or coupling mount at the end of it, it can sag a bit, whereas if the coupling is attached directly to your bogie, it doesn't sag. And that means the coupling is always at the right height, whereas I've found with a lot of the Pullmans, the Hornby Pullmans, and with the Gresleys and with the Bachmann Mark 1s, the couplings are never at quite the same height, which means they don't always couple onto each other properly, and sometimes only one coupling hook engages and the other one is too high to actually couple on. So anyway, there's a few thoughts about couplings and coaches and how to avoid derailments. That's all for now. Cheerio.